All right, students, we're going to be doing trigonometry in two different lessons because there's kind of a lot to explain here. So I'm going to start with an introduction to trigonometry. You may already have learned this in high school because it's very commonly taught in almost every high school: sine, cosine, and tangent. The real spelling of the words is S-I-N-E, C-O-S-I-N-E, and T-A-N-G-E-N-T, but we're not going to write all that. We're going to abbreviate S-I-N, C-O-S, and T-A-N, just the first three letters of each word. Now, there's three rules you have to remember in relation to a right triangle, which is right here. Notice the triangle has a right angle. We're going to be doing trigonometry using just right angles. Okay, now the two sides that make up the right angle, those are called legs of the triangle. And the biggest side, which is opposite the 90 degrees, that's called the hypotenuse. But we're going to also use other wording based on the angle that you're working with. We're going to use an angle down here. And if you look at this angle and you go opposite, this is the leg opposite, or just the word opposite for short. This would be the leg next to it, and they use a fancy word in trigonometry. It's called the leg adjacent. The word adjacent just means next to. So the leg next to it, called the leg adjacent, is over here, and opposite it would be right here. Okay? Now here's how you set up the problems. I'm going to take you to a problem, and it says in each diagram, find the missing side labeled X. Okay? The first one is right here. You're looking at the diagram, you start with the angle, and you look and see what you have. You have an opposite side, and you have an adjacent side. And you ask yourself, which of the three trig functions would use opposite and adjacent? And if you recall, it's right here, tangent. Opposite over adjacent. So that tells you you're going to write tangent, then you write the angle, and then you just use the rule, opposite over adjacent. So it's x over 8. Now, tangent of 28, for now you could use a calculator. Next lesson I'm going to show you how to do these, and you won't need a calculator. But right now, if you have a calculator, just go to your calculator or go to any online site and type in the word calculator. And you could use the scientific calculator that pops up. Just put tangent of 28. By the way, make sure it's pointing to degrees, D-E-G, they usually abbreviate it. If it says R-A-D, that's radians, that's a different answer. So it has to be pointing to degrees on the scientific calculator. Then you type tangent of 28, hit equal, and you'll get a whole bunch of decimal numbers. But you don't have to use all of them, just the first two numbers, decimal 5-3. All those other numbers that you get from the calculator, ignore them. Just the decimal and the first two numbers is all you need. Unless the number in front is not a 0. If you get, for example, 1.53, you'd have to use the 1 also. But in this problem, when you use the calculator, there'll be a 0, a 5, a 3, and there'll be other numbers. You just need the decimal and the 5-3. Okay, then you bring down the x over 8, and you're going to use a familiar method to finish this. Cross multiply. Every time two fractions are equal, cross multiply. So x times 1 is x. 53 times 8, you could easily work it out. And you'll get 424, or 424. Don't forget the decimal. You must put the decimal at the end. You count 2 back. So you count 2 back in your answer. And you get 4.24. Okay? Now, the next problem, which is right here, is a different diagram. This time, the angle, when you start with the angle, you have a leg next to it, and you have a hypotenuse. Notice there is no opposite. Because there is no opposite, you're not using sine. So you say to yourself, which one has an adjacent and a hypotenuse? And that would be cosine. So to set this up, you say cosine of the angle, cosine of 21, equals adjacent over hypotenuse. That'll give you this equation, x over 3. Okay, and then as I explained, you're going to go to the any online service and get cosine of 21, or you could use a scientific calculator, and you'll get 0.93, just the decimal, and the first two numbers only. Don't use any others. Bring this down to cross multiply, just like we did before, and when you multiply 0.93 times 3, you'll get 279. Okay, putting the decimal in, the answer would be 2.79. And that's it. Okay, you notice that each problem is done with cross multiply, and that'll give you the answer almost every time in these problems. Later on, if you take more advanced math, and I know some of you are majoring in science, when you take more advanced math, it won't necessarily always be that simple. It might be a little harder, but for now, I just want you to get all the basics. Let's do one more example. If you look over here, in this diagram, I'm going to cover this up first so that you'll figure it out. This time the angle is not down here, the angle is up here. Okay, now you could use some geometry that all angles in a triangle add up to 180, and you could take away 90, and then, and you'll be left with 90 for these two, and get this angle. However, that's not necessary. You don't even have to use this angle. You could go straight to this angle, because you have an opposite, x, and you have a hypotenuse, 8. As long as you have two things that you could use in the triangle, you're all set. So since we have opposite and hypotenuse, you say to yourself, which trig function uses an opposite and a hypotenuse? Okay, and that would be sine. So to set it up, you go sine of the angle, 34. Remember, we're using this angle, not this one. And then just follow it. Opposite over hypotenuse would be x over 8. Okay, and then you use something online to get sine of 34. That'll give you 0.55 using just the first two numbers. Bring down the x over 8. Again, cross product. So you have to multiply 0.55 times 8. That'll give you 440. Putting the decimal in, your answer is 4.4. The 0 is not necessary, so I left that out. So 4.4 would be a good answer. Okay, so that's how you do trig. Now, I'm going to do the next lesson next time, where I'm going to show you how to solve problems using trigonometry. But before we get to that, I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. Okay, so this is homework number 12, which you're going to do and email it to me when you're done. Okay, 3 problems, and in each problem, just like I did before, you're going to find the side that's labeled x. Okay, you have to figure out which trig function to use. When you're done, the answers are right here, but don't cheat. Don't look at the answers yet. First you do the problems, and then you check to see if your answers are right. If you have any question, just email me and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Okay, good luck with this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye.